Good afternoon.
Hello, how are you?
Very well, very well. How things going?
Very good, very good.
Let me check. Doing pretty good. Wendy, do we know how many folks we're going to have?
No,
Okay.
but it's only 2:57, so you know our crew.
Well, they're not all in manufacturing.
It always takes a little bit longer.
So, should I call you Wendy or Tammy?
You can call me whatever you want. Just can't guarantee I'll answer.
Because you are signed in as Tammy.
Yeah. This is the one where we set them all up on so that we had one main computer.
I'm just teasing you. I mean, that's offering, you know? Yeah. So I'm looking forward to figure out how I can get paid for marketing.
Me too.
There are already two.
I expect to learn a lot on this call. I think I tend to learn more from the people I present to than they learn from me typically.
Well, normally, well, I'm sure it depends a little bit on the crowd, but there's always, it opens different angles and facets.
Yeah.
How about Nancy?
Hey, Nancy. Hey, Dan. Hi, Nancy. Hi, Dan. Hi, David.
Hey, hey, hey.
Hello.
We'll give it about another 30 seconds and then we'll go ahead and get started. Keeping to our time frames. All right. First, I'd like to thank Michael for taking some time to share how he gets paid for his marketing. Michael's been with us since 2000, and he is going to share with us today, especially how he works with colleges. So we do ask that you have your phones on mute, and then we'll open it up for questions towards the end. So, Michael, it's all yours.
All righty. Well, thanks for being here. Always a pleasure to get together with other affiliates. And did we lose Nancy? I thought I saw her on there, or is she still there?
I'm there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. As I told Wendy, this is one of those things when you're asked to do something, you probably ought to think about it before you actually agree to do it. Because the more I got into this, the more I realized that there's probably a lot of things I'm not doing, but a lot of that's also on purpose. So we'll get into that as we go through it. I'm going to kind of walk you through, and this is literally, this template I'm using is actually the template I use for all of those pay marketing opportunities. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background, and you probably didn't even know this, but the Center for Continuous Improvement is my company, and we're divided into 7 different institutes, very basically areas of expertise. And you may not have known it, but each of you play a part in one or more of these institutes, since we have the network to work with. And so again, as part of marketing yourself, regardless of whether you get paid for it, I think there's always opportunity at the beginning to kind of give a little bit of a sense of your expertise or your background. So that's an example of one of the things I use. So before we get too far, what do you want to get out of today? Is there anything in particular that you're looking for given the topic?
Well, I would be interested in some ideas how to make marketing ourselves maybe even productive into a revenue generation.
Okay.
Hi, Michael. David.
Hey, David.
Hi. I'm just interested. I do a lot of give back work as an advisor and also guest lecturer, and I do a lot of stuff with the university. And I'm interested to know how you just present your program and how you work and the other factor and monetize the thing. So
Okay.
I'm all ears on that.
Okay.
Hey, Mike, this is Harry. Thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
Really, what I want to get out of it is really how you use marketing. I mean, our marketing is really very limited. It's mostly through one-to-one relationships and word of mouth.
Okay.
Not so much in really marketing ourselves, so to speak.
Okay. Okay. I think anybody else? Anything else, Nancy? You have anything or any other questions or not questions, but any specifics you want to get out of today?
I keep losing my audio. Again, thank you, Michael, for doing this. I'm very curious about your interactions with educational institutions for two very specific reasons. One, I'm in contact with an organization out of Bangalore, India, that's interested in developing a soft skills curriculum to be offered starting with freshman year all the way through senior year to help students be more productive when they enter the workplace. And there's a team of us that are interfacing with them.
Awesome.
And then I just last week met a lady with Towson University, and I was trying to find the acronym. It's something like the Maryland International Education Consortium, again, focused on, I think, activities in the international arena and education. So I'll be having a follow-up meeting with her. So I'm very interested as to how you position yourself in the arena.
Okay. And education is a different arena. And again, I can only speak from my experience, but they tend to be, particularly when you get to the university level, they tend to think that they know everything already.
Right.
So that's a different bit of a nut to crack. That's a bit different nut to crack. So anyway, keep calm. It's quiz time. I think it's important for this discussion that we all get on the same page. So what exactly is marketing in your minds? What does marketing mean?
Not sales.
Okay. That was my next question. How does it relate to sales?
Well, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
I think in my book, marketing is basically getting one part is branding, creating and maintaining, nurturing the brand, and opening up potential channels for business.
Okay.
Michael, you're spending 1x and you're returning a multiple of X through your activities. And
okay. So how does it really, Manfred, you said it's not selling. So how does marketing relate to selling?
To me, it's preparatory.
Yeah, the old saying, It's not what you know, it's who you know. Right?
Mm-hmm. And
Marketing,
who knows you?
it's who knows you. That's the key. So marketing and I grew up on the farm, so I'll use farm vernacular. It's preparing the soil,
Mm-hmm.
getting people ready for the sales process. And we have, and the reason I go back to that, you may think, well, you know, that's okay. Everybody knows that, particularly in the network, but it's a very important distinction that we got to keep in mind as we discuss today's topic. Because my experience is I've gotten myself in a bit of hot water, not really hot water, but I've lost opportunities because at the beginning I didn't keep those things separate when I set down the road to trying to get paid for marketing myself, and I can talk a little bit more about that later on. So we're all clear. It's getting known. It's getting people to know you, to recognize you or your brand, and to prepare their minds for the opportunity to have a discussion with you. So what have you all done in the past to get known? I know, Manfred, you said you had limited marketing, I think was your earlier comment, but I'm curious as to what strategies you have experienced so far.
When I started out meanwhile, what is it, 12 years ago, my marketing was mainly based on networking.
Okay.
Of course, meanwhile, I'm using social media. I'm using LinkedIn. I'm using Facebook. I'm also dabbling a little bit around in Instagram to a degree, and I'm doing some email marketing, but very limited.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, Mike, this is Harry. Yeah, for us, the same thing. It's started off with networking with people we knew and people we had relationships with.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, using various organizations to get the word out, and using social media as well, predominantly LinkedIn, in basically posting information for people to see and, you know, commenting on other useful information and using that to actually send information to people we know that might be helpful to them.
Okay.
I would add to that list speaking engagements.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
How about you, David?
Yeah, okay. What I've done basically on top of a lot of these givebacks for the networking purposes, that I've got 3 basic segments to go to, and that's the executive coaching, that is interim CEO, and also as an independent board member. And as part of this, I'm going through all these different avenues. I think speaking engagement is great. I personally just finished writing a draft of a 500-page book that will come out by the end of next year. So, you know, we just keep working it every single day. And obviously Lynn is on there to have a nice profile and whatnot.
Yeah, there's a tremendous number of opportunities from a marketing standpoint. The question is how many of them actually pay you, right? That you get some revenue out of it. And I just put a cursory list together, so it's not even comprehensive list of alternatives. And I've used a lot of these over the years, and still do use some of those that you mentioned with articles and blogs. And I think if you went through all of the network affiliates, there are experts in all of these at some point in time. I mean, I know some of the network affiliates that have done TV shows and have their own radio shows and things like that. The key is how many of those are really paying gigs. I've done some TV work, I've done some radio work, but those are generally just you know, opportunities to get your name out there, but they're not really paying. In speaking engagements, again, oftentimes they will pay. My experience has been that you've got to build some level of recognition or name recognition before you get into those paid gigs. So I'm going to focus for today's discussion. I'm going to focus on in particular on those that have been most profitable for me, namely strategic partnerships, and they're really coupled together with open enrollment classes. And it might be helpful as I take you through the thought process I use to decide kind of the who, what, when, and how I decided to focus a lot of my time and attention on those two things. First of all, and again, this may sound trite, but you know, what's the goal? What specifically are you going after in terms of your paid marketing is what I call it. And for me, it was to generate at least $100,000 in annual project revenue generated through paid marketing. So in other words, I want to generate $100,000 worth of projects with customers after having them paid to market to me. And I think this is important. There's three words to remember in whichever one of these you choose to go down. There's three words to remember: focus, focus, focus. I grew up on a farm. I'm not the brightest bulb in the closet, so I got to stay focused on those few things that I need to execute in order to get where I want to be. And one of the things for this, in terms of me focusing on this area, is I'd done that previous list, probably all of them at some point in time, but really, to be quite honest, have never really focused on any of them specifically. I was all over the map. And at one point, I remembered the time I spent with my senseis from Japan in my lean journey in manufacturing. And they say if you try to catch 6 rabbits, you'll go hungry. But if you focus on one, you'll eat. Unless, of course, you're Elmer Fudd, and then the rabbit always wins. But so that's kind of where I'm coming from, is the tighter my focus is, I find that the more successful I am. So that was my goal, to generate at least $100,000 in annual project revenue from being paid to market to people. And then I think the next thing is, what are your target markets? What, in rank order, what are your top 5 target markets, if you have those? For me, there were 4, and that's based geographically here where I'm at. Manufacturing is my number 1 target market, because that's my background. That's what my corporate career was in. Followed by telecom, because we have a lot of telecom in our area, a lot of healthcare, and a lot of commercial construction. We have the Associated Builders and Contractors is a merit-based industry association for commercial contractors. Our state has the largest ABC association in the United States. They have more than 1,200 member companies just in the state of Mississippi. So that's one of the reasons I was in, because it's huge. And as it turns out, then rank order organizations with relationships to people in those target markets. So who am I going after, and who has relationships with those? In my case, there were several different markets had different relationships. For example, as it turns out, for the manufacturing market, the organizations that provide the most exposure was our state universities and community college system, particularly workforce development. They're constantly being barraged with requests for specific topics from really from every conceivable industry. But the contacts that I had generated over the years were primarily in manufacturing and those other markets that I talked about. Industry associations with the ABC, and also strategic partnerships with some very large accounting firms.
Hey, Mike, could I interrupt with a question, or do you
Sure.
want to carry on and questions in the end?
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So very interested in what you're talking about manufacturing. And I wondered to what extent you have been involved in doing grants, state grants. It seems like organizations like ours that help with leadership development are successful with manufacturers if they are able to secure a grant.
I've not done anything with grants.
Okay.
I don't have anybody. I've looked into it. There's an awful lot involved with it. I don't have any grant writers on staff, and it's extremely expensive.
I know.
Somebody write a grant for you.
Yeah, that's what I ran into. So I wondered, but you're answering the question. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And I think it depends on what's available to you. I think every state, for example, the community college system in the state of Mississippi is one of the highest ranked community college systems in the country. And it's huge. I mean, they have tremendous resources thrown into them, particularly, and this has been, I'm going to say 12 years ago, when all of the state's workforce development funding was put into the workforce community college system. So that created a whole nother organization within the community colleges, for which they still don't have a tremendous amount of time or expertise to deal with all of the requests they have. So they reach out a lot for folks with that expertise to help them out to meet their customer demands. So then the next step that was rank order target market needs. So for me, again, that was using the contacts that I had, the networking, as Manfred has expressed a couple of times. That was very important in determining what those needs were. And I had a relationship with one community college in particular that allowed us to create a survey that went out under their name to get that information from basically across all industries. So we were able to get a lot of that information for that particular area. Now, I have to quantify or qualify something in terms of our community college system. I mentioned it's very large, but the state is divided up into different areas. Each area has its own community college system, and they are very parochial. In other words, if I have a Holmes County community or Holmes Community College, a session with Holmes Community College, nobody from anywhere outside of their area can enroll in that. Does that make sense? So it's they can't cross lines. They can't, I can't go work with a company in Hines Community College's area if I'm working with Holmes Community College. I have to have a relationship with Hines. Does that make sense? Well, it doesn't make sense, but that's the way it is. I guess, do you understand what I'm talking about? So that requires much more, creating many more relationships with different organizations, and they all work differently. They all are unique. I think the next things that are important to decide is how much is your time worth? For me, my answer to that first question is I needed to cover my cost. I'm going to get paid for marketing. I'm going to at least cover my cost. And for me, that was $50 an hour plus expenses, which is a fraction of what I normally charge. But that was kind of, if I'm going to get paid to market, I'm going to at least cover my costs. So that's the starting point. The next question is, how much is your offering worth? And that's, do some research. What's the going rate, depending on the time, how much time you're going to put in, and what the topic is. And my advice is always be a market leader. Never be the cheapest. As my friend Doug Hall from Eureka Ranch says, if you're not unique, you better be cheap. So be unique in what you're providing. And I think David talked a lot about pro bono stuff, or giving. I think it's true. I believe it's true that givers gain. But we got to keep in mind that while most people say they want something for nothing, no one ever believes they get something of value for nothing. So it doesn't mean we don't do pro bono work. For example, in order to create the opportunities to getting paid for marketing, is about creating some relationships. So I did a lot of staff development sessions for the colleges. I did speaking at their organization's luncheons. So whatever associations the director was involved with, I always was available for them to fill in or to do some speaking for them, and served on association boards, nonprofit boards, and things like that. So I'm not saying that all my marketing, all my efforts were in paid marketing, but at some point you have to get in the door with folks and get to know them. And here, in particular in the Deep South, it is still very much an old boys club. I think it's that way in many places. It's just maybe not as strong. You literally hear, if they don't know you, or if they don't know someone who knows you, they will not see you. They will not talk to you. And that was something I learned the hard way, being a Yankee moving to the Deep South, having been here for 3 years and then put my shingle out. It was a long slog to get known and to get people to say, he's okay, you can talk to him. And I don't know what anybody else's experience is, but in the Deep South, that's what I've experienced. Any questions about any of those? No.
Great. I love Mississippi. Dolph Baker's a good friend of mine in Cal, Maine. Having said that, we're up here in New England and we can't even say that kind of stuff, and we'll get in big trouble.
Well, we just got shoes last year, so but we got to remember.
Hi, Michael. It's Nancy.
Hey, Nancy.
Go ahead. Yeah, I just, if you want to finish your thought, that's fine. Then I had one question about what you've been talking about. You mentioned strategic partnerships were one area that you focused on, and you suggested that you developed strategic partnerships with accounting firms. Could you elaborate more on what that looked like and what that brought to the table?
Yeah, that actually came about through my work on the as the chair for the education committee for the Associated Builders and Contractors. One of the managing partners was also on that board, and we got to know each other from the board, and we talked about our different skill sets. And Dan actually made the suggestion. He said, we ought to partner up and do a tour, and this was some years ago, but do a speaking tour, he and I together, and we called it the perfect storm, because at that time there were three critical things in coming together in the industry, in the commercial building industry, that was making staying in business very difficult. So we partnered on the we did a 6-city tour through Mississippi and Alabama, and we did. It was a paid luncheon that people came, and Dan and I split off. He did his half, I did my half, and it was all tied together and how that all works to help them live through the perfect storm. And so that has led then to a strategic partner. That was a strategic partnership is in terms the way I define it, and that has led to Dan has brought work to me. I've brought work to them, in not just in construction as well. So they were opening the manufacturing side of their business, something that they had not done much of. So I could bring them opportunities for that, and they helped me into construction and more of that, with it not being my background in my corporate career.
Okay.
So that's what I mean by a strategic partnership. They do something and they have sets of customers that I don't have access to, and they do something I can't do. I do something they can't do, and I have sets of customers that they're interested in gaining access to. So I bring Dan to events as he's available. He's a senior managing partner now, so he's a very busy man, and they're number 8 in the nation now in terms of accounting firms. So they're pretty busy, but we still have that relationship. Does that answer your question?
Oh, absolutely, because I had the impression that you were targeting accounting firms to partner with. And what I'm hearing is that through relationships, you were able to expand the relationship with an accounting firm, that both of you then benefited from it.
Yes.
Yeah, that definitely helps. Now, to respond to your kind of good old boys network, so since sort of by accident I fell into the construction arena, and I would have to, it is sort of an unconscious bias. I do believe that it's more difficult to get them to pay attention to, example, women in some of these industries. But what I can absolutely say, and this has happened very recently, my passion or my focus has always been to do work internationally. And through accident, I have gotten very well connected in the international community in the Baltimore area. And as a whole, it is a much more receptive community. It is one that embraces you and allows you to be involved, and it's a whole different feeling.
Yeah, when you talked about some of the projects you have in the works with overseas partnerships, that's intriguing. I've often thought about that. I think that's an opportunity, particularly for our network.
Oh, absolutely.
What we provide, but it's not something. Again, I've frankly had the time to focus on, and obviously, if it was important, I would have focused on it. To me, anyway. So, so I think the key for all of this so far is about attitude. And again, I emphasize it's about marketing and not about selling when we're doing the things. What I've been doing. What are your goals for whatever session you're going into? Is it to try to sell them something, or is it to become known as an authority on a particular subject? So what's the end game going in? And for me, I think the way I think about it is, I'm going to provide something of value. When somebody pays me to, no matter how little or how much, I'm going to provide something of value. So I am indeed selling myself, but I think of it more in terms of the first stage in the buying selling process. So what are the two keys? What are the two things we're trying to do there? Make a favorable first impression and gain favorable attention. That's the two goals I have for any of these sessions. So the dangers in focusing on selling, I think I mentioned that early on when I tried this. I did a dialogue session. Anybody here, have you done the dialogue workshop? If you haven't, just let me say it this way. Great information. People get all excited about it. I had the entire auditorium full of CEOs and company presidents at the Mississippi State Cavs extension, which is Center for Advanced Vehicular Systems. And I did the dialogue the first time, the dialogue just as it's written. And I got to the end of it, and one of the CEOs that I had a couple of meetings with, and the timing just wasn't right for them at that particular point, but he came up to me afterwards and he said, "I'm really disappointed." He said, "I thought I was going to, it all sounds good, it's all great, but what you're basically doing is I have to go, you're trying to sell me on something. And I came here for information." And I think a lot of that, a lot of that has, because of the way I am, it's my belief system. I never wanted anybody to feel that way. I always wanted them to leave with something important that they could actually use. And yes, they can use dialogue, and I've used it a lot, but that left a permanent impression on me that I really have to focus on giving them something of value, and that's what they're going to remember. That's why they remember me, is because I didn't try to sell them something. So give you an idea of the scope is what this has turned into. Now, I started down this path about 4 years ago. So I'm going to give you show a screenshot. This is just the workshop folder, just for the workshops that we do. Now you'll notice that just in transformational leadership, there's 20 different workshops within that, or 20 different workshop series within that. And then, for example, on the team leadership series, there are 12 workshops. Each of these are half-day workshops. Notice anything about these? Do they look familiar? You're muted, Manfred.
It's basically the process.
Yeah, what I did was I took each chapter and said, what are the 3 most important points out of that chapter? And I built a 4-hour workshop out of that. So all of my paid marketing, the vast majority of paid marketing, is done through workshops. Now you'll see some of these are 8 hours, so it can vary from 2 hours to 8 hours. I actually have some 3-day workshops. But the key is that you have and again, all of this started, if I go back, leadership and team building were the 2 key needs that came out of the research that we did with the target industries. So that's what started all of this. The very first set, 1.0, was transformational leadership. So we created a series out of the team leadership, a series out of the manager, a series out of executive leadership. And you'll notice also these first few are the basic workshops from the toolkit. Right? Actually, probably first 8. So I think the message there is we have a tremendous amount of information that people want and need, and if we can give it to them in small bits, small slices, we can actually give them something of value and get paid for doing it. So here's the first page of a set of workshops that we sent out to the community colleges. Now, one of the things I really worked hard on the community colleges was because it gives me an opportunity to do 2 things. First of all, not only do I get paid for marketing by facilitating the workshops themselves, the college actually marketed the workshops to all of their industry contacts on my behalf. So that was a double whammy. I got their entire database coming from somebody that they trust and ask for information, and I still get paid for the workshops. So you'll notice that there's material cost on here. The college, the agreement I had with the college is they gave me the $50 an hour and paid for all my travel expenses. And then I also collect, this is a pass-through cost, so $50 from each person for materials, which is basically handouts and exercises that I do during the workshops. So these were the three things. Just look at this first workshop. These are the three areas I'm going to focus on. And to give you an idea, this is the outline. This is the first page of the outline. So this is what I'm going to cover. This is how long I'm going to spend on it. This is what I'm going to use to do it. So each one of those workshops that you saw has this laid out in all the detail. So what am I doing? What have I done with that? I give them something that they want. I present it in a way that's it's very unusual, because if you go back to this, you'll notice, what do we use? The 30 squares, the individual, team leader and organizational goals and the definition of success. Right? Mm-hmm. And this, I don't know if any of you have ever done this before, but this little IR is the most powerful thing I've ever done. And I start out every workshop by doing it, or by asking the question, what is it we each get paid for? What one word describes what we get paid for? Anybody want to guess what that word is?
Results.
Results. 7-letter word starts with R. Every single person gets paid for getting results, and we all get paid for getting improved results. That has been the most powerful question I've ever asked. And again, I ask it at the beginning of every workshop. I don't care what it's about, because that's what we're about. And that sets the tone. It's not about talking about me, it's talking about them and what they want to get out of it and what results that they need to get. Okay, questions?
Can you draw any connection between, for example, what you do at the college with those workshops and how that translated into projects at the X, Y, or Z?
Yes, I'll give you probably. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
In what type of projects?
Okay. Well, to answer that last question, it's across the board. Everything from strategic planning to frontline leadership and everything in between. The workshops I did with Holmes Community College in particular, they're in their area, and they have a partnership that was driven by the state when Nissan started building their plant here 15 years ago. It was a requirement for Holmes Community College to be their workforce development pipeline. So in other words, Nissan's going to do all this hiring, got 6,000 people coming through. We got to have somebody to help train them. Holmes Community College was tagged with that. So they have a relationship with Nissan, and obviously they're on their distribution for workshops that Holmes put on. So I had some frontline supervisors start coming to leadership, open enrollment leadership workshops. Then within the next time we did those leadership, we typically do them with the college 1 or 2 days a week, and we cycle through spring semester, summer semester, fall semester. What we found, or what happened with Nissan, is higher levels of people were coming to those classes. And that ended up getting us to be invited by Nissan North America to be part of the working group to help design the development for their next generation of frontline supervisors. So that project now has turned into, every quarter we're doing 10 supervisors. Started out with people who had never been supervisors. We integrated the team leadership process into their 6-month training that went through all of the Alliance Production Way and all of their internal systems, and incorporated the leadership portion of that. And that first group of people that went out on the floor as brand new supervisors, in many cases, their performance was 300% higher than their twin line on the same shift. So now we're involved with Nissan in not just doing the next generation of supervisors, but also current supervisors. And that's a whole different design in the overall process, but the fundamentals are still the same. Mm-hmm. So that has been an ongoing, I can't even tell you how much revenue that's generated off the top of my head. But we have a manufacturing operation that I started because some of their supervisors came to those classes. They had their plant manager come. Now I'm coaching their plant manager. I'm actually implementing a lean transformation with them. I've worked with all of their managers, all of their supervisors, and we'll actually start working next year with some hourly folks. If you remember, my goal was to generate at least $100,000 in revenue just from those paid marketing. The last 2 years, I started 4 years ago down this path. The last 2 years, we've generated that. So 2016, 2017, and in the first quarter of this year, we exceeded that just for this year so far.
Hey, Mike. Yeah, Mike, just a question for you. So in the state of Massachusetts, we have in the city of Worcester, which is the second largest city in the state, we have Worcester State University, and they have a workshop development
for workforce
as well. And when I spoke with them, I got the impression that they felt I was competing with them and not really helping. So have you come across that? I mean, because that's really how I perceived they were looking at me.
I have run across that, particularly at the university level.
Okay.
I have run across it in one of our community colleges, and that's primarily because of the director's ego. Right. He really doesn't know. They don't know how to do it. They can't do it, but he thinks they do, or they can. But university level is a tougher nut to crack. I mentioned that I have done work with the Mississippi State, particularly in the Cavs extension. And that primarily came out of, I managed to sit on the review board for the PhD dissertation for the director of that particular section of Mississippi State. So he owed me. And that's how I got that gig.
Okay.
So again, I think there's an infinite number of situations and an infinite number of variables. But I think the basic principles are the same. If you can give them something that's of value, and it may be, and I don't know what conversations you've had with them. Sometimes it's not about going in trying to sell them something. It's just find out if they need anything.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? No? I either answered a lot of questions or you have absolutely no interest in what I shared.
Michael, you just confirmed something I think important, that in part of this program, whether or not it's university or what have you, you got to figure out where they truly are long and they're short. And even if in a university situation where they do have those egos, there's some area where they're going to be very short. Try to help them out in that area. And then as a favor back, they're likely to help you out. Did I?
Yeah.
Am I rephrasing
Yeah.
that?
And again, it has been the toughest nut for me to crack. Because I hate to say this, I don't believe that education will fundamentally improve as long as educators are in charge of it. And that's because of something we learned through the process. And that is that we are products of our environment, right? And we have a need to be right. The organizations, the education organizations that I've talked to, the folks that are leading those, what process did they come through to get where they are? The same process that they're leading, right? So their need to be right says, it's not the process, because look at me, I'm successful, right? So it's not me, it's those knuckleheads who are, it's those students, or it's the, right? So I think that's the biggest block we have. There are, fortunately, there are some folks in education that I have run into, and some of those are extremely important partnerships with us that know better. They know that there's other things out there, and they know they don't have the answers to everything. But I think they've been conditioned to think that they do, and they believe that. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox now.
No, Mike, you're very right. I mean, I've been very involved through a local chamber with workforce development, an initiative that was started here in the Blackstone Valley. And the problem that we try to solve is that the trade schools have changed and have become college prep schools.
Yes.
So there are
they're bridging the gap between the deficiencies of K through 12 in order to prepare people for college.
Right, and so we find that many local small manufacturers have a tremendous big problem in finding skilled labor.
Mm-hmm.
And so kids that want to work in a factory or want to do the trade kind of work, if they don't have a sufficient GPA in middle school, they won't even get into a trade school, because the trade school pick the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
And so there is a large amount of kids that just can't go anywhere. They don't want to be in high school. They don't want to learn math and English and all these things. They just want to become a welder or a metal worker, and they have nowhere to go. So that's kind of the gap they're trying to fill.
Yeah, and they spend all their time on the technical aspects. And if anybody wants a copy of this, just send me an email. I'll be happy to share it with you. Years ago, I think it was 13 different industry associations in the state got together with the Board of Education and came up with a list of what employers expect from employees.
Right.
There were 13 items on that list. Only one was skill-based.
Mm-hmm.
All the rest were based on attitudes and habits.
Right.
So I've used that. I've slid that across the table because they don't post it anymore in high schools or in colleges. They don't have it up. But I slide it across the table and ask the people I'm talking to, does that look like a pretty good list? Yes. Okay. How many of those are skill-based? Out of 13, there's one. So that's what? More than 90% of that list has to do with attitudes and habits. How much of your curriculum as a percentage is based on skills and knowledge, technical skills, and how much is based on developing the attitudes and habits? And you know what they have to say? 99.9% is on the technical skills. the knowledge of tech, and I don't care what you call technical, what you put into that. I'm not just talking about welding. I'm talking about math or science or any of that stuff, right? So that has opened some doors that says, you know, we really need to, because this is what determines success in an organization, for an individual in an organization. It's their attitudes and habits. And you're all familiar with the cash box, right?
Sure.
Yeah, that's the same principle. Anyway, don't get me started.
Michael, it's interesting to hear you say that, and I'd love to get a copy of that article, because that's exactly what's driving this discussion with my contacts in India. They were working with Oxford University in Bangalore, and it's probably one of the top engineering schools in India, and it's highly competitive to attract the brightest and the best students. But what the university recognized is when they would graduate with these great skills in engineering, they were failing in the workplace because they didn't have soft skills.
Yeah.
And
I've got
that's
4 senior managers at Nissan that I'm doing one-on-one coaching, and they're in for parts quality engineering, production engineering, and facility engineering. All very bright people, all very, very technically skilled. Some of them are, I would say, world class in terms of their technical knowledge, but they suck when it comes to getting the most out of the people that work for them.
Right. That's what this group was seeing, and that's what we're hoping to be able to help them scope out and define the developmental process, working with freshmen all the way through 4 years of school to help them be better prepared to lead in the workplace.
Yeah, awesome, Nancy. I'd like to see what that outline flows out through 4 years. That'd be interesting to see.
Well, and I'll be happy to. I've got my little team here. I'd be happy to talk to you offline if you want to sit on when we get some of our discussion groups organized and move forward. I'd be very interested to hear your observations and make recommendations.
Yeah, just let me know if I'm available. I'd love to.
Okay. Is your email will you send us a copy of these slides, by the way, so that we can extract your contact information?
I think I don't know if Wendy's still on, but yeah, if you send me an email.
What
is your email? What is your email, Michael?
No, I was just going to say to make it easier, Michael, if you just send it to me, we'll post it to the affiliate website so everybody can grab it by the Learning Labs.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
It just makes it easier than you having to manage all those different emails. Just send it to me and we'll get it posted and we'll be good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wendy, are you talking about both the slides as well as the other handout that Michael was talking about?
What employers expect?
Yeah, what employers expect.
You want me to do both of those, Wendy?
Sure.
Okay.
Great.
That works.
I really like
I better write it down.
I wrote it down too.
Well, could you send me an email? Because I'm headed out as soon as we're done.
Yes,
with it.
I will send you an email.
Okay. So how did we do today?
Great.
Right.
Very good. Thank you.
Michael,
Thank
will
you
you
very much, Michael.
Michael, will you be at the Power Summit at the end of the month?
I will not. I am. I've had a hunting trip scheduled, and it just so happened to overlap that. So I'll be in the deep woods.
Uh-oh. I feel sorry for the animals.
Well, that's the way it is. I hate to say it, but I won't miss y'all at I have to look. I grew up on the farm, youngest of 8 kids, 7 years behind my closest brother. So I was effectively a only child for most of my life, growing until I started going to school. I spent all my time in the woods, literally. I was outside the entire time. Mom would lock me out. As soon as I had breakfast, she'd put a lunch box out on the front porch, and I had my dinner. I had lunch, and I stayed out the entire time. So even as an adult, and back in my corporate career, when I had to do psychological tests to manage some black programs, it's part of my psyche. I have to be out in the woods for some extended period of time every year, or I will go nuts.
We wouldn't want that.
Well, most people say I'm halfway there now, so it wouldn't take
Welcome
much.
to the club.
I understand.
But no, I won't be there. Hopefully, I don't know about the winter. I just have to see. The scheduling is horrendous. You wouldn't, the first through September 15th, I put 40,000 miles on my car this year.
Goodness.
Anyway, I think we're over.
And I would like to thank Michael for taking his time to give us some ideas on how to market yourself and get paid for it.
Thank you, Michael.
You're very welcome. Any questions, just holler.
All right. Thank
All
you,
right.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.